as well. And one of the things I have been trying to learn about is the old basketball scene. And we did have uh, the expected demise of the Indian Panthers.
Who could have seen it coming, eh? Who could have
Although
possibly seen it coming?
they were suspended, but there is a break in the NBL to accommodate for this epic 3-game series between the Tall Blacks and the Tall Ferns. Another little goofy thing there is just like the lack of coverage around the Tall Blacks and the Tall Ferns playing against Australia 3 games, and not necessarily from the other media outlets, but also like New Zealand basketball, which is a bit weird. Like they do have some Instagram stuff popping off, but
They didn't
the
even have a thing on their website about the squad, like that would have been nice to know.
yeah, well, that's where I went. I went to the website. There's nothing there on the website. I went to their Twitter. Their Twitter doesn't work from 2024, but they do have the IG popping off for anyone who likes a bit of social media. You probably shouldn't, because you should probably get outside and do some nature things around the beautiful lands of Aotearoa. But you did write about the timeline of the Indian Panthers in our newsletter last Friday, which you can go have a read. Pretty in-depth, pretty comprehensive, as we do here at the Niche Cache. And there are a couple of gems that to me don't reflect, like it's okay to have the Indian Panthers come in, shit the bed, and go away. Like that's okay. We all make mistakes, bad things happen, all good, you live, you learn, you try again, have a crack another day. But when I'm checking around the Tall Blacks and the Tall Ferns, I'm looking for information, I'm like, what are you doing? And then you kind of, what I'm ultimately thinking about is that, like the football Fern stuff with the New Zealand football, I think the basketball stuff can be so much better to actually align with the strength of basketball in New Zealand. Like the NBL sums it up nicely for me, because the NBL is a great competition. The NBL is the best regional competition that we cover, because they actually go to the regions. There's no rugby league competition that goes to Palmerston North and then goes to Nelson, then goes to Dunedin, goes to Napier. Like no rugby league competition's doing that. Cricket does it on a very small scale with Plunkett Shield and Ford Trophy, but the big thing for cricket is Super Smash, where you do get to the regions, but you're getting 3 or 4 games. You're not getting the quantity that you get in the NBL. Football, I mean, you got the National League, that's cool.
But it's dominated by teams from Wellington, Christchurch, and Auckland. The last year, I think Napier were the only men's team that qualified from outside those 3 main cities. And the women's competition has the Fed teams, but not for much longer. So it's just like the Southern, and although the way it's going down south, it's the Otago teams that are actually dominating the South Island League at the moment. But it's a whole other story. But yes, that football is the same. It's like it's dominated by the 3 main cities, and you don't get a lot of games outside of there in the National League.
But it's not on the scale of the NBL. It's not even anywhere close. Even if they did go to the regions, it's not even broadcasted the same way the NBL is. So as a national competition hitting the regions, that doesn't happen. But you still get the quirks of graffiti on shipping containers and stuff like that happening in National League football. The only thing I can think about in New Zealand sport that does as good a regional work as the NBL is NPC rugby. And all you hear about NPC rugby is how that needs to be shut down, how it's a waste of money and all this stuff. So who knows what's happening there. But I mean, these regional competitions, the nationwide competitions, need to be celebrated, because they're one of the best things about New Zealand sport. NBL does a great job. Watch Manawatu Jets have an epic win in Palmerston North, and you're seeing kids, you're seeing older folk, you're seeing men, you're seeing women dressed in green, having a good time. This is the beauty of regional sport in Aotearoa. At the same time, the NBL cancels an Indian Panthers Rapid League game due to traffic issues. while there,
Allegedly.
yeah, just chill out. Like, let me roll through them. While there are clear problems with payments to players from the Indian Panthers. So the NBL wasn't acknowledging that their players in their competition were being screwed over by the Indian Panthers. Instead, they cancelled a game due to traffic issues. Then we have the fact that while they are cancelling a game due to traffic issues, players on the Indian Panthers are using food banks to eat. They're taking donations from other players. All while the NBL is papering over this situation. Then we have the fact that the Indian Panthers' connection to India was through, as you say in our newsletter, as for the mysterious INBL Pro Comp, it was founded in 2021. It had one season in 2022. This is where the Indian Panthers come from. So now we're supposed to be surprised that the Indian Panthers shit the bed. So it's like, I don't know. I've just been kind of in this zone where I love the basketball stuff in New Zealand, but the way the Indian Panthers situation was handled, it's pretty terrible, to be honest. And now there's like, I mean, you've referenced it a bunch of times. You can't, I don't know. You said the same paragraph twice in the last two newsletters about the squad announcements.
One was paywalled, one wasn't paywalled. That's why.
Right. Gotcha. So, like, the way the squads are announced are the goofiest way possible. There's a lot of just like weird stuff happening with the basketball scene in Aotearoa that I do not believe reflects the epic nature of basketball in New Zealand. And if we're talking about how the football Ferns are being a little bit mismanaged, these aspects of the basketball scene need to be highlighted as well. But it's, again, to come full circle, yes. I mean, why you need to expand with an Indian team is ridiculous for starters. Like, you could have just had like a Moana Pacifica, Pacific Islands basketball team. What's wrong with that? What's wrong with a random Australian team that's just right over there? Like, there's so many more sensible solutions to NBL expansion in New Zealand than getting an Indian team. Like, where did an Indian idea come from? I mean, we could have gone political and got P&G involved like the NRL did. Like, there's so many other options aside from Indian Panthers. And I love the NBL as a competition. I love the growth of basketball in New Zealand. But this situation has, like, the treatment of the players involved is terrible. And that's, like, really disappointing because that doesn't reflect that. Paints the basketball scene in New Zealand with a pretty, stinky brush. So before we do get into celebrating some of these basketball things coming up, I think we just needed to get all that said, and you can follow up with any extra information or opinion.
Yeah, I mean, the whole, I don't know what due diligence was done there. I understand, like, there's stuff that was said would happen and didn't happen, which isn't really the NBL's fault so much as the Panthers' fault, but or the fact that it sounds like they might have been hiding where the money was coming from and implying that it was all like just based on this league. But then now they're saying that one of the news reports anyway hinted that the money was actually supposed to come from property investors in Melbourne, which is where's how these all supposed to. And then there was even the signs were clear from day one that this was a struggling enterprise, and it's not got better at any point when you get like your best player quits and leaves to sign with another team that was also winless at the same time. Like, I'd rather play for that winless team than this winless team. Is not a great sign. Miles Pierce, the coach, quitting after one game, that should have been a pretty big red flag. Let alone the fact that the one game he coached had a bunch of just local ringing players because that's all they could find. The fact that we're basically like, it's a little bit tricky with the NBL because the fact that there's not great coverage of it outside of like Sky does a good job of broadcasting it. That's awesome. But you don't get a lot of like coverage outside the broadcast that isn't coming from the NBL itself. So the NBL does do a good job of hyping its own product up and putting that stuff out there, getting highlights packages on YouTube and clips on social media and various different types of. Sometimes they're a little bit weird. The concepts of their. I don't know if you've been through the NBL website and read like the articles that they'll write, previewing and reviewing and stuff like that. And they'll, there's one of them that's in the format of like they only say their things in the form of a question or little gimmicks like that. But it's all good, it's good stuff and there's good information there and there's good analysis there to be had. But you're not going to get the critical aspect from in-house media, right? Like even the Australian NBL, you get a lot of that where they're responsible for a lot of their own stuff, so they're not going to tell us how bad the Breakers are or whatever because they don't want people to know the Breakers have been a shambles. Under previous ownership, of course, we're moving on to brighter pastures now. So yeah, I've been like skeptical about this Panthers thing from the start because it was obviously a commercial gimmick. Like, why India? Why the Panthers? Well, because there's 1.4 billion people in India. What a great untapped market to get into. Except I don't know that anyone in India of those 1.4 billion people have paid any attention to this. None whatsoever. And the ones that did, the at least 5 or 6 people that we know for certain have heard of it because they signed playing contracts to play for them and never turned up. Well, that doesn't sound like a great sign either. But even from the very beginning, it was there's visa issues with the players, and then there's what do you call it? There's an Indian national team camp that's why players aren't turning up. And I don't know how many people were involved in the wider training camp, but I looked at the squads from the games that they played at the end of that camp, and there were 3 players from the roughly 10 I think it was Indian nationals that were signed to play for the Panthers. So where are the other 7 guys? I think like 2 of them turned up plus a Chinese import. Like, where's everyone else? But we don't hear about this. We don't get told about this. So I think there's been covering up. What I'm saying is there's been like sweeping this thing under the rug from the start. Like there's been a bit of misinformation because like no one believes there were traffic issues, right? A Canterbury team managed to get to I think it's they're playing at the Franklin Pool and Leisure Centre, I believe it's called. Nice enough venue, not as nice as the Pullman Arena where they were supposed to be playing at first, the Panthers, but they moved after about 5 home games because allegedly they couldn't afford it was cheaper to play in is it Pukekohe, I think, where the thing is, or wherever. So it's cheaper to play there than it was where they were otherwise. And allegedly they haven't been training for a while because they don't have anything between games to play because all these like red flags throughout the whole thing is. And I think there's no way that a team based in Auckland, by the way, had traffic issues to get to the game, but a team from Canterbury was able to get there. Like, clearly that's not the truth. And there's been a lot of those things where it's like the truth's been massaged a little bit, probably in the hope that the Panthers would, sort their shit out, but clearly that hasn't happened. So it's been a bit of a shambles, and hopefully we don't have to hear of them again, because hopefully they don't give them the opportunity to pay some bills and then make some more mistakes moving forward. Like they've done more than enough to just cut ties and say that's enough of that. We'll learn some lessons, but this one didn't work, and we're just gonna, I don't know, give everyone else default wins that was supposed to play the Panthers. They've lost every game by double digits as well, including multiple games by more than 30 points. So it's not like they're adding anything competitive to the league either.
The issue for me is not the Indian Panthers. I don't care about the Indian Panthers at all. The issue is with the NBL, whatever idea it was to bring in the Indian Panthers, whatever due diligence they didn't do to actually go and find and do some research about the mechanisms behind the team, and then all the little niggly stuff that you've talked about that covered up the issues that were going on behind the scenes. All of that falls on the shoulders of the NBL, and all of which is a bit of a bummer. But we do have international basketball being played tomorrow night in Adelaide. Then we have May 9th in Sunshine Coast. Then May 11th, which is Sunday, we are in Hamilton. Unfortunately, I think both teams may be down 2-0 in the series because they are playing Australia, and Australia is really good at basketball. It's like the reality of the situation is that Australia will probably win this series, and they'll probably be 2 up before we get to Hamilton. But we do have a couple of two squads, Tall Fern squad and a Tall Black squad. I do not know much about the Tall Fern squad. The only player that really rings a bell for me is Penina Davidson, who is not selected. And then we go into the Tall Blacks, and they'll probably lose, as I'm saying, but it's a very fun squad for the Tall Blacks with the youngsters involved. We've got the one and only Jackson Ball. We have Julius Halaifanua coming out of college basketball. We got Oscar Goodman, who I imagine is coming out of college basketball as well. We got Flynn Cameron. They got the Isaac brothers, and then you've got a lot of like just really high quality Tall Blacks, Taylor Britt, Shea Illy, Corey Webster, those type of characters as well. Break down some key points in these squads for folks to learn about. Again, I don't think we need to like preview the series, how they're going to play, the context around the teams, because they will probably lose to Australia. But I'm curious, especially the Tall Blacks, I'm curious about the youngsters, and then I'm just curious about anything with the Tall Fern squad.
Yeah, definitely no tactical insights about this, because how could you win this? Like, especially with that Tall Fern squad, as I'll get to in a second, exactly why there's no possible way of predicting what's going on there. Both of these squads definitely have an eye towards the future. Like I've mentioned many times about how the Tall Blacks, because it bears repeating because it's a very cool thing that the Tall Blacks do, is they like to bring an extra guy along with their squad, or use the last man on the roster to give an opportunity to a younger emerging player. Well, guys who have gotten those opportunities in the last year or two include Jackson Ball, Julius Halaifanua, Oscar Goodman, Tama Isaac. They're all picked at once here. Then that alone gives you an indication of what type of angle they're going for with this squad, where it is entirely domestic based or college players who obviously in the college off season now, because whatever the March Madness thingy majiggy that's done. I don't think Goodman and Halaifanua have gone over there, but I think Halaifanua's actual first eligible season starts next season, and Goodman, I think, could have had, or it might be the other way around. One of them could have started, played half a season, but didn't, sort of waited on, redshirted, and will play. So both of them, their first season of eligibility will be next season. I think that's when Jackson Ball goes over too. And actually Tama Isaac's just signed on to pledged his allegiance, whatever you call it, committed. He's committed to a college over there. Didn't check which one. That doesn't really matter because they all sound the same to me. But it gives you a little bit of an indication there as well of just the youth of this team. But it's youth that's been mixed in with serious veterans like Corey Webster, like Ruben Tarangi, probably you'd say Taylor Britt and Toy Smith-Milner fall into that category now as well. And then emerging Australian League level players like Carlin Davison. Flynn Cameron's a step above that. He's just signed his first big contract after his initial rookie stint with Melbourne United. Walter Brown maybe is in that category too. He's sort of somewhere in between those two aspects. But yeah, it's an interesting squad. And most of these guys have been playing New Zealand NBL at the moment. Shea Illy's there as well in that veteran status too. So good team. It'll lose to Australia, but they'll be competitive, and they got a few, they'll have a good veteran starting five out of that with a lot of youth on the bench, and it'll be quite fun to see how some of those players interact. And there will definitely there's enough of the regulars who would be in a top strength squad to have a semblance of a top strength squad, but definitely with all that depth being like young guys who are aimed towards the future. And of course, Judd Flavel's picked a lot of Canterbury Rams affiliates in there, but that's how it should be because they've been the best team domestically for the last 2 years, and they're still the best team this year as well. They're top of the table at the midway point, so that's they should be supplying the most Tall Blacks. As for the Tall Ferns, this will be the first squad with Nat Hurst, an Australian coach who was the interim, but now she's been appointed on a permanent basis. It will be her first gig on that permanent basis coming up against Australia. And they've picked a bigger squad. They've got, I think, 14 players there, whereas the Tall Blacks have got 12. And that squad is extremely youthful. You mentioned no Penina Davidson, obviously no Charlie Sledger-Walker, who's still working her way back from ACL injury. No, Talia Tupaya or Stella Beck or a lot of those more experienced players. They are, because the men's NBL season is ongoing at the moment. The women's is not. That happens later in the year, so that's off season. That might be a factor as well. What you got instead is there's a couple of more familiar names, like Ezra McGoldrick is there, McKenna Dale is there. They've both pretty much established themselves as first choice players. McGoldrick's probably pushing towards starting 5 status for the Tall Ferns. But a lot of debutantes too. Like I think there's 6 debutantes out of 14 players, and then some of the ones who aren't debutantes, like Payless Hokianga or Bailey Flavel, for example, are amongst the youngest in the team because they just happen to have debuted on a previous tour, but are also extremely young. So it's a massively raw team, and it seems like every time the Tall Ferns get together, it's like, here's a squad that's going to go younger, and here we're going to build towards the future. It's like, but you did that last time. You just go younger than your younger future-looking squad every time. So at some point, and there is, I think it's next year as an Asia Cup. There's a men's Asia Cup later this year. So I think roundabout then for like the major tournaments, like you see with the Tall Blacks, that's when you start trying to pull together as many of your best players as possible. This is a friendly series, so it's an opportunity to do something like this. But yeah, very young team where even the ones who aren't debutantes are also still emerging players. But there are a few of them, like, Tegan Graham is there, Emmy Shearer as well. There's a couple of those, like Hayley Smiler also, where like they haven't played for the national team, but they've just finished up their college careers, so it's not like they're 16, 17-year-olds getting the opportunity. There's 21, 22, 23-year-olds who have been through multiple years of college ball, often playing games in national tournaments, and it's just that they happen to now be more available for the national team, and here's a chance to bring them in. So it'll be, with the Tall Ferns, new coach, very raw, new-looking squad, a bit more of an opportunity maybe just to learn some players and get an idea of who some of these guys are, some of these girls are. Ahead of what I expect, quite a few of them will then pop up in the Tauihi League later in the year as well, so that'll be handy to get a little bit of an introduction there. I will mention the Australian squads, though. Also, they're not at full strength either. Obviously, they're also picking from a very similar standpoint of let's get a few established locals that happen to be available, and then some younger players or some emerging players in alongside them, see how it goes. It's just that they have 5 times the population and more basketball depth, so that's probably going to show through on the court. But it will be fun to see how that Tall Ferns side go, and I think maybe the Tall Blacks, don't know if they'll be more competitive than the Tall Ferns. I don't know if they'll be challenging for results in this series, but they have the capability. There's enough guys in there that can put up some points and keep things challenging for the Aussies. So we'll see how it goes.
Unfortunately, Steven Adams was bundled out of the NBA playoffs, but not after finishing on a high as an individual. Maybe not in the final game where the Warriors did work around Steven Adams, but given that Steven Adams had his whole season managed to injury, like I'm going back earlier in the season, he's playing every second game. He's playing less than 20 minutes in every single game until we get to the 3-quarter stage of the season. Then he finishes the season with 26 minutes, 17 minutes, 31 minutes, and 25 minutes. I think overall, this was an incredible season for Steven Adams, and it sets up a fascinating couple of months for him moving forward.
Definitely not the way I was hoping that that Steven Adams season would finish, especially after, like, I don't know, yeah, it must always sting to lose in Game 7, but when you fight back from 3-1 down as well, you're sort of left with wondering a little bit of, like, you know, could you have done a little bit more at the start of the series, which obviously they could have, but it's one of those things where, like, the what do you call it? I don't know, the reputation this Houston Rockets team has is of being a very young team, and we sort of debunked that a little bit. They are one of the youngest teams in the NBA, but when we talked about this a couple of weeks ago, we sort of pointed out, like, yeah, but the youngest team in the playoffs this season is the Oklahoma City Thunder, who look like they also might be the best team in the playoffs. So the youth doesn't have to mean struggling in the playoffs, but there was definitely, when you're up against the Golden State Warriors and Steph Curry and Draymond Green and even Jimmy Butler, whose playoff expertise hasn't come with the Warriors up until this season, but certainly he's had some great runs himself in the past. Like, it's pretty hard to overcome that, especially when you get into those Game 7 emotions and which team started better, right? It was the Golden State Warriors took a lead and pretty much held that lead throughout. Although it wasn't, Steph Curry barely scored. I don't even know if he scored at all in the first half. He ended up with 20 plus points. Jimmy Butler ended up with 20 plus points. Both of them brilliant in the second half there, as Houston were trying to come back, and Golden State just kept, every time they got close, they nudged again with a little run themselves. It was Buddy Hield at the start, who went absolutely nuts. He scored 33 points, shot 9 of 11 from 3-point range. It's pretty hard to beat that in general. But unfortunately for the Rockets, that is kind of the one weakness of their double big lineup, is they defend in a zone, which means you're not necessarily tracking guys around the edge. So you can be giving up to those sharpshooters who can just catch and shoot like that. You can be giving up space for them to get off open shots fairly consistently. And I think that's what happened, is that Buddy Hield was making those shots in this game, and it dug the Rockets into a bit of a hole where they had to score to keep up with the Warriors. They couldn't just rely on being defensive starts leading into offense themselves through transition hoops and whatever. Like, they actually had to play some structured half-court offense, and unfortunately that's their Achilles heel. That's the thing they suck at the most, is they don't really have an organizing point guard or a style of play that works from that manner. Like, they've been a middling at best offensive team through the season. It's defensively that they're so good, and also their ability to score in certain spots, which lately one of those has been that the Adams plus Sengun lineup. But for the first time, it took 7 games for Steve Kerr to come up with something that worked against it, and even then there was a bit of luck, just having Hield making those shots rather than missing those shots. But yeah, unfortunately, it was I won't say one trick pony stuff from the Houston Rockets, but yeah, maybe they still needed a couple of other tricks, and it didn't get there. And that's where that being a younger team and not having that same experience through certain of your key players can be a big factor when it comes to those moments, which is, I don't know, it's a weird one to think about it when you're watching it from a Steven Adams perspective, because he's not that guy. He's not a youthful player who sort of feels like, yeah, all right, let's see him win a championship now. You know, he's been around, he's been in the playoffs enough, he's been knocked out in the first round enough as well. Like, that's happened a lot to him. It happened like 4 years in a row with OKC and the Russell Westbrook post-Durant years. But yeah, would have been nice. They were good enough to win that, but they didn't. That's how it goes when you get close series, is someone's going to win and someone's going to lose. But the good thing about that series on the whole, because Game 7 wasn't great for Adams, he was all right, but it was the first time he had a negative plus minus in the entire series, and it was just, as I say, the double big stuff didn't work nearly as well. And Golden State they played good basketball. They played good physical basketball, and they matched it as best they could, and then made some shots. That can win you a game, and the playoffs doing that kind of stuff. But yeah, I mean, from the whole, taking the whole thing into context, and especially after Game 6, where Adams was so good and he scored 17 points, and they kept hacking him. I think they hacked him like 8 times. So he went to the free throw line on 8 different occasions, 2 free throws each. Can't remember any and one, so I think that was what it was. Made 9 of 16 which is a little bit above his average. Not ideal, but then two of the ones that he missed, Sengun grabs them and chucks in second chance, putbacks for 2 more points. So effectively, they got 13 points from 8 possessions for the Hacker Adams strategy, which ironically made it one of their most efficient scoring methods. So it really backfired on the Golden State Warriors in that one, especially because Adams was just having such a big game outside of that. And yeah, he got to do the post-game media stuff after that. He got to say some funny stuff in the press conference, but most of all, it meant like when he checks in Game 7 in Houston, massive cheers when he turns in off the bench for the first time. That was awesome. A lot of spotlight on him, a lot of stats throughout the whole thing, a lot of NBA commentators talking about what a great series he had on an individual level. So while it is a bummer that they don't get to take that into a second round series against Minnesota, it would have been, which would have been as well, a little bit of a revenge match for Adams there, because last time he played Minnesota in the playoffs, he got benched himself, and that was with Memphis. And then they advanced and went on to lose to Golden State in the next series, which another example where Adams plays really well against Golden State in the playoffs, but loses the series. It happened with OKC Thunder in the Western Conference Finals that time, 2016-17, whenever that was. Happened with Memphis. It's happened with Houston now. Fortunately, well, Steph Curry can't play forever, but hopefully Adams can outlast him and get something going there. But the important thing is that a year ago, people were talking about, well, did Memphis trade Steven Adams because they thought that knee wasn't going to get better and maybe damage goods situation here, and selling it while they still can, and is he going to get back to the player he once was, and how is he going to fit in Houston, and blah, blah, blah. What do you know? A year later, he's just been outstanding for them in a playoff series, which is another thing people for some reason keep saying is, but is he a playoff player? Like, he's good in the regular season, but does he perform in the playoffs? And I've never understood how he had that reputation, because it's always seemed like, except for that one Minnesota series, which you could argue was bad coaching as much as anything Adams did wrong. At the very least, it was just a bad matchup, rather than his own mistakes. Like, never quite understood why that was a reputation people had, but I'm pretty sure he just blew that one out of the water. He blew out any worries about his knee, blew those out of the water as well. And leading into free agency, he's now in a situation, thanks to how well he played in the playoffs here, he's in a situation where if he wants to stay with the Rockets are going to value him every bit as much as he values them. Like, if he feels loyalty, if he likes the spot, he wants to stay around, well, they're going to pay to keep him because they've just seen how important he can be. But if he wants to go and be a starter on another team, he's also shown everyone else how good he can be and exactly why they should be going out there and trying to recruit him as well. So it's a bummer. I wanted to see him in the second round, but like, he's restored his entire career with the way these playoffs have gone, with the way even the last few months of the regular season leading into this. But everything was kind of geared towards, let's get him in the best shape for the playoffs. Let's not overuse him throughout certainly the first half of the season. The way Houston managed that could have been, well, it was a little bit frustrating just because we wanted to see more Steven Adams, but the way it's ended up was the way we sort of expected it would be. It's like, safety first, make sure he's right when it matters. And he was playing like well, and he was playing over 30 minutes in some of these games against Golden State. So like, everything's good for him. Everything's set up for him to rejuvenate his NBA career and do what he wants to do for the next several years. But it would have been nice if they could have won that Game 7.
He played 30 minutes one game, so it was just once.
Only one.
Yeah.
Well, he would have got there in Game 7 if they hadn't been being thrashed for most of it, I think. But still, it's more than he did in the regular season.
There's a lot of like NBA nitty gritty that we don't need to get into here. Like, as a Kiwi watching Steven Adams, like, Jalen Green is not the star player, but it's a different story. And another thing we don't need to elaborate on, but the Warriors are a better playoff team than the Houston Rockets. But then you get into all the seeding, the regular season. Does the regular season matter? And all this like NBA angst that you can discuss. That is part of it. But like, just straight up and down, the Warriors are a better playoff team right now than the Houston Rockets. That's why it doesn't really feel terrible for me. But also, as you alluded to, like, Steven Adams showed what he is capable of as an NBA player, and something I haven't seen a whole lot before. having not watched every single Steven Adams minute in his NBA career, is him defending out on the perimeter. So he is like a old school NBA center who was making defensive plays near the 3-point line. That is going to be useful for whatever team he plays for next. If he stays with the Houston Rockets, that just helps them get even better defensively. Their identity is the Ime Udoka style of play, the defensive grit, rough, rugged, and score enough points to win games, but it's mainly defense. And Steven Adams is an important part of that. But then also, as you pointed out, it does make him an attractive player on the market. And my final thought with Steven Adams is Steven Adams has gone through the like it was the end of the big man. Then you start to get into small ball. Now we're back in you need a big man because you need someone to deal with Jokic. You need someone to deal with Chet Holmgren or whoever. Like there's a lot of really tall dudes in the NBA that you still need to be able to defend and attack to win basketball games. So you can't just go small all the time. Steven Adams has had a very, very solid, good NBA career in 3 different phases. To me, that is incredible. Yes, there are weaknesses. Yes, there are strengths to his game. You can poke holes in this and that. But Steven Adams has experienced it all. He's adapted to how the NBA is played, and he's still making a lot of money doing so. And in the final stint of that period of his career to this moment, I feel like he's added something else where he is quick and nimble and smart enough, crafty enough to make defensive plays out on the 3-point line, if not up near halfway, which he did earlier in the series against Steph Curry. So he continues to impress me. And obviously, if you get a lot more Steven Adams coverage, then you get a lot more people realizing like how awesome Aotearoa is as a country.
That perimeter stuff is a good point too, because like it's not that he hasn't. Every basketball is going to find themselves many times where you have to defend on the perimeter. That's just in a sport where switching your defender is such a common strategy, especially if you're a big man who gets caught in pick and rolls and stuff. I swear that used to be the thing. It was like that's what teams tried to do, was get Steven Adams on the edge, pick and roll, swap your man, so that Steph Curry or whoever is running at Steven Adams. Steph Curry could barely score past Steven Adams in this series, and he was challenging shots on the edge too. I think he will. I assume this is true because he says it, but I'll frame it as this is what he would say if you asked him. I can guarantee it because it's what he said at other points of his career about the same thing. Is that a lot of that is like structure. It's not so much is he more nimble, is he more athletic, because he's coming off 2 years out with a knee injury. Maybe he is, like maybe he's just built up his muscle in that time off, so where he has added some agility, but it's also knowing that he only has to cover this little bit because this guy is going to come if the guy goes back this angle, that's someone else's job, this is his area or whatever. Like knowing exactly what his role is down to a sort of pinpoint degree. But it wasn't just scheme stuff is the thing that I was noticing, because I saw a lot of that, like him challenging 3-point shooters on the edge, getting his hand up in their face and really making it hard for them, like closing out, which are maybe efforts that big men don't always do or don't always even necessarily see the need for. He was also blocking shots at the rim, and he's not really been a crazy shot blocker. I remember in his book he talks about, and Zach Lowe, when he had him on his podcast several years ago, spoke to him specifically about this. And I just remember that I had like a flashback of that, listening to that podcast while I was watching one of these games, about how Steven Adams celebrated when his block rate started going down, because he felt like, well, this means that not only am I it's not about contesting shots, it's about I'm actually deterring shots. So the blocks to go down, it means guys aren't even shooting past me. But now it's almost like he's broken that down to build it back up, if you know what I mean. Like he started to challenge these shots a little bit more. A lot of that, to be fair, is the double big thing. It's like you've got two big guys out there, so sometimes he's going to have to defend like a power forward, and sometimes also it's just this is just how they play. Is they're trying to turn this into a scrap in the paint, and that means being more active and more physical, and yeah, sticking your hand up and trying to block that ball. But just the aggression he showed on defense in this series, where it's not just withstanding, it's actually they were like sort of swarming over the Golden State Warriors. And yeah, I was picturing that same one when you're talking about the it's almost like the full court press from sometimes, where so like that steal he got in game whatever it was of the Steph Curry one that you mentioned is a great example too of like him like doubling up there, and it's going out of your way to try get a steal, and it worked. And like he's always been good at scrambling for loose balls. That's another reason why he's a good rebounder. But no, the aggressive tendencies to his defense just it made him. I don't know if it made him a better defender, but it made him feel like a better defender, certainly. And it just like there's a intimidation factor as well there that he doesn't always necessarily cash in on, that he certainly did in this series too. So these are all things that other teams are looking at and saying like, oh man, imagine if we got that in our system. And the Houston Rockets know exactly what it looks like in their system because it just showed it. So yeah, he's in a very interesting point. They'll be waiting with bated breath to see what happens when that free agency does hit, because that type of player could fit on any team in the league, you know.
One thing I would like to say with confidence about Steven Adams, I do not believe Steven Adams is going pig hunting barefoot. Like that isn't happening. It's a cool story for the Americans. You know, he's going out hunting for wild boar barefoot. It's a great story. Steven Adams, he's wearing jandals to NBA games. Like I can understand how like people believe that is true. I am not a pig hunter. Straight up and down, full steak and cheese pie, not a hunter at all. I, in no like video hunting show that I, do watch the odd hunting show, whatever it is, I have never heard of anyone going pig hunting barefoot. And I strongly believe that Steven Adams is wearing shoes of some description when he is going pig hunting. And if you're an American watching this, if you're an international audience, just please know that I strongly believe Steven Adams is wearing shoes when he does go pig hunting. And those shoes might be jandals, they might be sandals, they might be Crocs, they might be any kind of shoe. But Steven Adams is probably wearing shoes when he does go pig hunting, deer hunting, whatever other hunting on land, because on water, on the boat, he might be barefoot, that's all right. But if you're going out in the bush, even Steven Adams is probably wearing shoes.